Hello, and welcome to the Mustang Theatre Company's family-friendly storytime video. My name is Taylor Clemens, and I am the Assistant Professor of Theater here at Morningside College's School of Visual and Performing Arts. Today I will be reading several short fables written by Aesop. Now, a fable is a short tale that was written to teach us a moral lesson. So, at the end of each of these tales, we're going to pause for a moment to see if you can guess what the moral lesson was for each of them. So now, without further ado, let's begin Aesop's Fables. The Tortoise and the Hare. The hare one day laughed at the tortoise for his short feet, slowness, and awkwardness. "Though you may be swift as the wind," replied the tortoise good-naturedly, "I can beat you in a race." The hare looked on the challenge as a great joke, but consented to the trial of speed, and the fox was selected to act as an umpire and hold the stakes. The rivals started, and the hare, of course, soon left the tortoise far behind. Having reached the midway point to the goal, she began to play about, nibbling on the young herbage and amusing herself in many ways. The day being warm, she even thought she would take a little nap in a shady spot, for she thought that if the tortoise should pass her while she slept, she could easily overtake him again before he reached the end. The tortoise, meanwhile, plodded on, unwavering and unresting, straight towards the goal. The hare, having overslept herself, started up from her nap and was surprised to find the tortoise nowhere in sight. Off she went at full speed, but upon reaching the winning post, found that the tortoise was already there, waiting her arrival. Now take a moment and talk about what you think the moral of this story is. The moral of Tortoise and the Hare is slow and steady wins the race. The Fox and the Stork. A fox one day invited a stork to dine with him, and wishing to be amused at his expense, put the soup which he had for dinner in a large flat dish, so that, while he himself could lap it up quite easily, the stork could only dip in the tip of his long bill. Some time after, the stork, bearing his treatment in mind, invited the fox over to take dinner with him. He, in turn, put some minced meat in a long, narrow-necked vessel, into which he could easily put his bill, while Master Fox was forced to be content with licking what ran down the sides of the vessel. The fox then remembered his old trick, and could not but admit that the stork had well paid him out. What do you think the moral of this story is? The moral of The Fox and the Stork is, a joke is often returned with interest. Our third fable is The Peacock's Complaint. The peacock complained to Juno that while everyone laughed at his voice, an insignificant creature like the nightingale had a note that delighted all listeners. Juno, angry with the unreasonableness of her favorite bird, scolded him in the following terms. "Envious bird you are, I am sure you have no cause to complain. On your neck shines all the colors of the rainbow, and your extended tail gleams like a mass of gems. No living being has every good thing to its own share. The falcon is endowed with swiftness, the eagle strength, the parrot speech, the raven the gift of augury, and the nightingale a melodious note. Well, you have both size and beauty. Cease then to complain, or the gifts you have shall be taken away." What do you think the moral of this tale is? of the peacock's complaint is, contentment should be the source of every joy. Now for our fourth fable, The Two Crabs. "My dear," called out an old crab to her daughter one day, "why do you sidle along in that awkward manner? Why don't you go forward like other people?" "Well, mother," answered the young crab, "it seems to me that I go exactly like you do. Go first and show me how, and I will gladly follow." What do you think the moral of The Two Crabs is? The moral of The Two Crabs is, example is better than precept. Now for our fifth fable, The Fox Without a Tail. A fox once was caught in a trap by his tail, and in order to get away was forced to leave it behind. Knowing that without his tail he would be the laughing stock for all his fellows, he resolved to try to induce them to part with theirs. So, at the next assembly of foxes, he made a speech on the unprofitableness of tails in general, and the inconvenience of a fox's tail in particular, adding that he had never felt so easy since he had given up his own. When he had sat down, a sly old fellow rose, and waving his long brush with a graceful air, said, with a sneer, that if, like our last speaker, he had lost his tail, nothing further would have needed to convince him, but till such an accident should happen, he should certainly vote in favor of keeping his tail. What is the moral of this one? The moral of The Fox Without a Tail is, guard against those who would wish you to be reduced to their own level. Now for our sixth fable, The Woodcock and the Mallard. A woodcock and a mallard were feeding together in some marshy ground at the tail of a mill pond. "Lord," said the squeamish woodcock, "in what a voracious and beastly manner do you devour all that comes before you? Neither snail, frog, toad, nor any kind of filth can escape the fury of your enormous appetite. All alike goes down without measure and without distinction." "Good lack," replied the mallard, "pray how came you to be my accuser? And whence has your excessive delicacy a right to censure my plain eating? Is it a crime to fill one's belly? Or is it not indeed a virtue, rather, to be pleased with the food which nature offers us? Surely I would sooner be charged with gluttony than with that fickle and sickly appetite on which you are pleased to ground your superiority of taste. What silly vice is daintiness?" Thus, endeavoring to palate their respective passions, our birds parted with a mutual contempt. The mallard hastened to devour some garbage, which was in reality a bait, immediately gorged by a hook through mere greediness and oversight. Well, the woodcock, flying through a glade in order to seek his favorite juices, was entangled in a net, spread across it for that purpose, falling each of them thus a sacrifice to their different but equal foibles. What is the moral of this story? The moral of The Woodcock and the Mallard is, a voracious appetite and a fondness for daintiness equally distracts our attention from more material concerns. Now for our next fable, The Eagle and the Crow. A crow watched an eagle swoop with a majestic air from a cliff upon a flock of sheep and carry away a lamb in his talons. The whole thing looked so graceful and so easy that the crow at once proceeded to imitate it and pounced upon the back of the largest, fattest ram he could see. He tried to make off with it. He fought, and he could not move the ram, and his claws got so entangled in the animal's fleece that he couldn't get away himself. He therefore became an easy prey to the shepherd, who, coming up at the time, caught him, cut his wings, and gave him to his children for a plaything. They came crowding about their father and asked him what a strange bird that was. Why, he said, he'll tell you himself that he's an eagle, but you take my word for it, I know him to be a crow. What do you believe the moral of this tale is? The moral of the eagle and the crow is, 'tis folly to attempt what you are unable to perform. Our next fable is The Man and the Lion. A man and a lion once argued together as to which belonged to the nobler race. The man called the attention of the lion to a monument on which was sculpted a man striding over a fallen lion. That proves nothing at all, said the lion. If a lion had been the carver, he would have made the lion striding over the man. What is the moral of this one? The moral of The Man and the Lion is, men are but sorry witnesses to their own cause. Our next fable is The Fox and the Woodcutter. A fox, having been hunted hard and ran a long chase, saw a woodcutter at work and begged him to help him find some hiding place. The man said he might go into his cottage, which was close by. He was no sooner in than the huntsman came up. Have you seen a fox pass this way? They said. And the woodcutter said no, but pointed at the same time towards the place where the fox lay. The huntsman did not take the hint, however, and made off again at full speed. The fox, who had seen all that took place through a chink in the wall, thereupon came out and was walking away without a word. Why, how now? Said the man. Haven't you any manners to thank your host before you go? Yes, yes, said the fox. If your deeds had been as honest as your words, I would have given you thanks. What is the moral of this story? The moral of The Fox and the Woodcutter is, sincerity is shown by the heart. Now for our final fable of the video, The Owl and the Grasshopper. An owl who was sitting in a hollow tree, dozing away a long summer's afternoon, was very much disturbed by a rogue of a grasshopper who kept singing in the grass beneath. So far, indeed, from keeping quiet or moving away at the request of the owl, the grasshopper sang all the more, and called her an old blinker that only came out at nights when all honest people had gone to bed. The owl waited in silence for a short time, and then artfully addressed the grasshopper as follows. Well, my dear, if one cannot be allowed to sleep, it is something to be kept awake by such a pleasant little pipe as yours, which makes the most agreeable music, I must say. And now I think of it, My mistress Pallas gave me the other day a bottle of delicious nectar. If you will take the trouble to come up, you shall have a drop, and it will clear your voice nicely." The silly grasshopper, beside himself with the flattery, came hopping up to the owl. When he came within reach, the owl caught him, killed him, and finished her nap in comfort. What do you think the moral of this one is? The moral of the owl and the grasshopper is flattery works better than threats. I hope you've enjoyed this reading of Aesop's Fables. We will have many more fables to read through in future videos. If you want, in the description below, there is a link to download just the audio off of this video, so you can take these stories and listen to them on the go. Please remember to subscribe to the Mustang Theatre Company's YouTube channel and follow Morningside APO or Morningside College's School of Visual and Performing Arts on Facebook to stay up to date on our latest videos. Coming up on Wednesday, September 2nd of this week, we will be releasing our first recording of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Thank you, stay safe, and we'll see you on Wednesday.